You know, everyone can basically agree that Avatar The Last Airbender is probably one of the greatest animated shows to ever come out. I think that's just a common known fact. And every few years, a show comes out that everyone goes like, this could be the next Avatar. This could be the next animated show that I honestly feel has the potential to be that kind of great show. And then you watch it and you're like, oh, well, no, that's not it. And we go just basically, please stop saying that because we know it's really, really ever going to happen. Like, there are so many shows that get that label that have just basically disappointed every single time. Legend of Korra, Closer, and all of these other shows that basically give that same energy, but not as great as something like Avatar The Last Airbender. And even if we have like the actual live action version of its show, it's still not as good. But then in 2018, Netflix dropped The Dragon Prince. And I remember people saying that again. I had a couple of my friends say that specifically. Is this the next Avatar? And I was like, okay, sure, I've heard that before. And then I actually watched it. And I hate to say it, but I really do think that this show might be right this time and might have actually been that kind of show that people really just never actually got the chance to really witness. So, first things first, The Dragon Prince was a show created by Aaron Anaz and Justin Richmond. And if the name Aaron Anaz means and sounds anything familiar to you, that's because he was the head writer on Avatar The Last Airbender, like the head writer on Avatar. So when people say The Dragon Prince feels like Avatar, it's not a coincidence. It's not a fluke. It's literally just the same guy who created Zuko's redemption arc sitting down and going, okay, you know what? I've done this before. I can do this again. This time with just dragons and stuff. And obviously there were dragons in Avatar too, so kind of not much difference. And I mean, sure, yeah, take my money. Let's go. The show is actually amazing. So the show is produced by Wonderstorm and animated by Bardell Entertainment. And look, I'm going to be honest with you. When I first saw the animation style, I wasn't completely sold. It wasn't something that automatically enticed me into it. It's the kind of very weird CG that really took the early seasons to kind of make me get used to it. And like season one, Callum looks like rendered PS3 kind of thing, but I really didn't mind it for the most part. I really do, and eventually started to enjoy the animation style. But here's the thing: it gets better, like significantly better. By season three, the animation is genuinely gorgeous, and by the time you get to the later seasons, it actively looks incredible. So it's basically bounced off from that earlier seasons, and you eventually get to the point where I'll give it another shot, and that's exactly what I did. I got back to this show, rewatched it, and the world, amazing. Because the world was a real quick reason why this show kind of hit the wind and really took the kind of presence to me that Avatar actually gave me the same feeling of. Because they're in this land called Zadia, and in Zadia, there are six primal sources of magic: the sun, the moon, the stars, the sky, earth, and the ocean. Elves and dragons and other magical creatures all live there and use this magic basically primarily naturally, and all of these other specific kind of things. And then on the other side of the content, you have the human kingdoms, and humans can't use primal magic. So instead, they've developed this thing called dark magic, which involves using life force of magical creatures to cast spells, which, elves and dragons really weren't all that thrilled about, as you could imagine. Naturally, this led to a giant great war, which is where we pick up the story. So the show starts with this guy, King Harrow of Ketosis, and he's the king, right? The human king, and he's got two sons, Callum, who is his stepson, and Ezrin, who is the actual son and the crown prince. Callum is that kind of artsy kid that you knew back in school that can't do anything really correct, but he really does want to, which is honestly very genuinely relatable. And Ezrin is like 9 years old and can talk to animals and is therefore the most powerful person in any room that he enters. And then there's an elf assassin who shows up to kill the king. Her name is Rayla. She's a moon shadow elf. She wears a hood, has two swords, and has been trained since childhood to assassinate the human king for revenge for the king killing the dragon king, who apparently destroying the dragon prince's egg. And if you're currently thinking about wow, this elf sounds like an evil version of Zuko chasing the Avatar, I know, kind of similar, but not really, but we'll get there later. But here's the twist. Ezrin finds the Dragon Prince's egg, and it turns out it wasn't actually destroyed. It was hidden. And so Callum, Ezrin, and Rayla, who now kind of they've captured and are kind of working together in a way, now have to work together to return the egg to Zadia and stop the war before things truly go into full-on chaos. Which mean our main trio is a kid prince, his artsy stepbrother, and an elf who's basically been sent to murder their dad. So obviously kind of similar because just a normal road trip. And look, I know what you're thinking. You've kind of seen this kind of scenario before. Two siblings together and somebody that was sent to murder somebody else, and a lot of other things kind of similar in style, but obviously same writer, so there might be a couple similarities and the bones are similar, but the stories actually differ in a genuinely good way that doesn't make you automatically think this is just an Avatar copy. Because where it actually gets genuinely interesting and genuinely good is the characters. Because I think this is where Dragon Prince earns that comparison in a way that a lot of other shows really don't. Callum's arc in this show is generally one of the best in recent animated television that I've actively seen. He starts off as this kid who can't do magic right, but then he finds a magic cube that lets him cast one spell. He uses it and now it's gone. And everyone around him has powers while he doesn't. And eventually he wants to, figure out how to do something and actually matter to this team because he feels like kind of left out that, his brother can do all this special things with talking to animals. His other person that is in Moonshadow Love has other abilities that obviously lets her do other things. And so this show takes that kind of yearning and wanting to be able to help the team in a way that isn't just being smart and actively runs with it. And it takes it seriously. It doesn't just give him a power up in one episode and then in episode 3 and then just call it a day. Just it doesn't give him this random abilities and just calls it, leaves it alone. He actually has to earn these abilities. It makes him figure out what magic truly is. And then once he connects to the Sky Arcadium and becomes a human who can actually do primal magic, the first human to ever do it, by the way, it hits home because you've been with him this entire time and you've actively seen why his character development's gone so good. That's Avatar writing. That's Zuko's school entire full character development actually working. And then there's Rayla. Rayla is great. She's the assassin who's never actually killed anyone, which becomes this whole thing because in her hands are basically literally bounded by magic bindings that tighten the longer she delays completing her mission. So she's walking around with these slowly tightening bands on her hands that are basically meaning that she's refusing to kill innocent people. And it's really genuinely good writing, okay? I don't know what else to tell you. And then Ezrin, little baby Ezrin, who's 9 years old and is to become the king mid-show because their dad dies, all of the other things. Yeah, their dad dies. I'm not going to pretend like this show doesn't go there because it absolutely does. The Dragon Prince does not play around when it comes to emotional stakes. Characters die, sacrifices are having to be made, and bad things are happening to good people. The show doesn't skip over any of that. The villain, Varen, is actually doing a lot of the heavy lifting there because he's not just a mustache twirling bad guy. He genuinely believes that he's protecting humanity, and he thinks that dark magic is a tool worthy of using to save human lives and is worth doing whatever it costs and everything else. And then you can actually see his point of view even when he's being an absolutely terrible person about it. Which again, Avatar level writing. Ozai light. We've been there before and we love it. And then I think the Dragon Prince maybe goes even a step further than Avatar and how it handles its morality conflict itself. Because in Avatar, the Fire Nation are the bad guys. They did bad things. It's pretty clear. But in Dragon Prince, both sides have basically done generally awful things. And this is where both sides obviously have several grievances against each other that the soul asks you to hold all at once. And then basically you have the right to choose which either side you think has the right to do whatever you think. And you can actively see both perspectives on why they're right or wrong. Now, obviously, if you read the title, you obviously saw that I said this show is the closest thing that we have to Avatar. I didn't say it was Avatar level because, let's be honest, the show does stumble in a couple places. The pacing in the earlier seasons felt a little rough. One season was short, only 9 episodes. That feels like rushing through the setup, needing to be able to getting a little more room to breathe. If we're being honest, the world is so interesting and there's so much to establish. Sometimes that it kind of just blows to kind of just rush past stuff that I'd really wish that they spent more time on. The animation in season one specifically, I've already mentioned, but I want to say again, was generally something that put a couple people off a little bit. I'm not going to lie. And eventually we kind of actively get a little to a better place. But some of the people that never came back is honestly a shame because the low frame rate CG and the stylistic choice that they kind of went with was interesting, but they course corrected and the show looked greater and a lot better by the later seasons. Some of the comic relief doesn't always land. Some of the character called, like, there's a character called Bait who's called Ezrin's little glow toad that's actually pretty generally fine. He's kind of like an Appa kind of situation, or a situation where he's just like that kind of lovable pet that he's going to be sticking around throughout the entire show. And then there's the whole Amaya and Gren dynamic, which I actually love because there are moments where the show actually has tension in ways that feel a little too convenient. And the release schedule had been all over the place. Netflix dropped seasons in batches and huge gaps that honestly kind of killed the momentum. Like, you'd watch a season, get super into it, then wait 2 years for the next one. That's not how to build an audience. We know that the way that shows have kind of been made the last couple of years haven't really been great. It's like Stranger Things, for existence. Like, for example, season 1s through 5, there's like years between a couple of those seasons, and those characters genuinely aged from being like 12 years old in real life to some of the actual actors having kids in real life, and it's only supposed to be like 3 years between timelines in show. So we know a lot of things kind of did really have to kind of get split across way too many years. And then there's so many other things like you kind of have to deal with. But here's the thing, none of these problems are with the story of themselves. Like, none of them are the problem with writing on how the characters or whatever, the execution problems or the production problem, business problems. The actual show, the heart of it, is actually genuinely interesting and genuinely excellent. So when you ask me what I actually meant when I say The Dragon Prince is the closest thing we have to Avatar, it's not just because the same writer made it. It's because it has a trio of kids who's on a journey. It does what it takes. It does take some things that Avatar did, like the world that could be a generic fantasy setting, make sure you feel like it's actually real. Six primal sources of magic is just a very cool system, if we're going to be honest. And if you actually like take a lot of the stuff that actually happens in the show, you could see the similarities here and there, but the way that the shows and the world makes you feel is really just very good and interesting to think about it. They mean something with the characters and how they use them. Rayla the Moon Shadow Elf, the moon is about mystery and change and transformation, and that's really Rayla's arc. And she's transforming from an assassin to a hero. She's changing everything that she was taught she knew about humans. And this is the push to follow who she's going to have to be instead of who she was. And that's really interesting to see, the kind of character development and the kind of layered world building that the world actually has, and the worlds that the world reflect the themes of. Avatar did that with bending. Dragon Prince does the same thing with magic and the way that they use it. And the found family, because of course it's about found family. Callan and Ezrin are obviously like kind of stepbrothers, kind of just like brothers in a way, but they do have to work with their relationship and act time and time again, depending on how their characters are feeling a specific episode, obviously. And Rayla basically have no business caring all about each other. They're people that have been to war for generations and basically actively have to eventually get to the point where they can understand each other. And the show actually makes you understand that they can grow in a very good way. Callan and Rayla's relationship is actually very, very good. And the way that their relationship grows and their love grows is one of the best that I've actually seen. And that's what both shows actually understand that most shows don't. The plot isn't just an excuse to put these people together and watch them figure out how to love each other despite everything that the world is telling them not to do. Avatar did that with Aang and Zuko, and the Dragon Prince did the same thing with Callum and Rayla. If you actually know it, you know. As good as Avatar is, I don't think that the show is obviously on the same level, but I enjoyed this show probably just as much, if not a little less, than I did Avatar. Avatar is one of the greatest animated shows that I've already stated. Like, that's just probably one of the best defining shows. But honestly, this show is probably better than most people think it is, and that's enough. That's more than enough. So yeah, Dragon Prince, for those who haven't watched it yet, if you have bounced it off or just left it alone, honestly suggest go back. It gets a lot better, and the show is very interesting. And if you have watched it and you're sitting and thinking like, oh, so it's actually better than Avatar, first, obviously, calm down. Second, I respect the commitment, but drop down in the comments and tell me how you feel about this argument. If there's any other things that you guys might want to talk about, let me know down in the comment section below, because there are currently a lot of seasons of the show that have to go through, so I could easily talk about this show for days. So if you guys want more content like this, please put it down in the comments. Shows from the 90s, 2000s, 2010s that deserve to be talked about, stuff that you grew up with, stuff that you maybe forgot existed, new shows that you guys maybe want to talk about. That's exactly what Rovii Retro is for, and I will happily make those videos anytime that you guys want it. Subscribe if you want to hear all about that, and I will see you guys next Tuesday. Peace.